Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday night. It's a lot warmer than the last time I hosted, and I'm really enjoying as we're heading into summer and seeing all the summer migrants arrive back in our skies. Yeah, good night for conservation conversations. Tonight we're joined by Jess Wilmot in the tech support role, and of course Matthew Orolowitz, our colleague at BirdLife South Africa, is our guest tonight, and he'll be telling us all about Botha's Lark, South Africa's most endangered bird. And I see that there's people joining from all over the country, all over the world, in fact, from Saudi Arabia to England to the US. And thank you all so much for choosing to be with us tonight. It really means a lot. And I hope you're as excited as I am to hear from Matthew tonight about Botha's Lark. On to the next webinars. In fact, a deep dive specifically into the BirdLife platform and citizen science platforms in general on the 28th of October, again by Alan Lee, who's becoming a familiar face around here, as well as his colleague, Dr. Dave Ellis-Smith. And then on the 11th of November, we've got secretary bird tracking with Cassie Carstens, I think one of the most adventurous of us at BirdLife South Africa. He climbs into thorn trees regularly in search of secretary bird chicks. And then closing off our season for the year on the 25th of November is our head of conservation, Dr. Hanneline Smith-Robinson, who will be walking us through BirdLife South Africa's highlights of the year, our conservation successes, and everything that we have to be grateful for, and the things we look forward to achieving next year as well. So we'd love you to join these last three shows, and then we'll be breaking and getting ready for next year. Anyway, on to tonight's topic. I think we've waited long enough, so I'm not going to beat around the bush any longer. Welcome, Matt. Matthew Orolowitz, the Birding Ecotours Fellow of Grasslands Conservation, is going to tell us all about Botha's Lark and his efforts to understand and find this bird. I think we all have misplaced our car keys from time to time, but as the human race, it's not often that you misplace an entire species. So Matt, the Birding Ecotours Fellow of Grasslands Conservation here at BirdLife South Africa, who's actually from Cape Town and has a master's on larks, is going to be telling us just exactly how that happens, how a whole species goes missing, and then also what it takes to find it once again. So he began this search in December 2023, before starting at BirdLife South Africa. And, luckily he had the master's on larks, so he was the guy that needed to be called up to help solve this tricky riddle. But Matt, just before we get on to Botha's Lark, before you were a bird guy, you were a baboon guy. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I had the fortune or misfortune of having to interact with those troublesome primates of the Cape. They do have a very warm and soft place in my heart, but they did give me a run for my money. Climbing up mountains, standing out in the rain, it was quite an experience. But I have to say, I am glad that I have progressed from that job.
And Matt, chasing after Botha's Lark, is it any easier than chasing after baboons?
In essence, I think it's a lot easier to find baboons. Versus Lark is a bit of a different ball game altogether. But I think a lot of the skills that I learned on the job are transferable, especially the fortitude of having to walk very far and very long distances in uneven terrain.
Yeah, I can imagine, Matt, and I'm sure we're going to hear more about that. And I'm very glad to have you on the team, and particularly glad to have you online with us all tonight. And thanks once more to everyone who's joined. Got over 300 people here tonight, Matt. No pressure. So thanks everyone from every corner of the world that's joining. That's all from me. And Matt, over to you. I really look forward to your presentation.
Okay, great. Let me just share my screen. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me this evening as I take you through the life of the Botha's Lark. So before I speak about the Botha's Lark, let me take you on a journey to the Mascarene Islands, an archipelago in the Indian Ocean. This archipelago consists of three islands that
Matt,
in reunion.
sorry to bug you,
Yes.
but your screen's gone gray. So maybe just cancel sharing and then share again.
Okay. Will do.
You're just getting into the groove there. I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
That's no problem.
Um, can the audience just indicate with a thumbs up or a thumbs down if they're seeing some sort of gray squares over the screen? Yeah, so people are thumbsing up. Matt, I don't know. It's like a strange gray mark on the screen. I don't know if there's any settings you can change on your side. I'm busy looking at the settings on my side. If everyone can just bear with us for 1 sec while we try to figure out why this is happening. Matt, maybe change your slide. Change a slide or two forward if it doesn't give too much away. I've never seen this happen before. And move your mouse around your screen, Matt. Maybe it might sort of scare it away. Go to your bottom left corner. Oh, that's strange. Okay, I'm seeing some messages in the chat that it's all fine on their side. So, all right, we'll just carry on. Great. Thanks so much, everybody in the audience, for letting me know. And let's carry on. Matt, over to you once more.
Okay, sure, no problem. Sorry for the spoilers, but yeah, these three islands are Reunion, Mauritius, and Rodriguez Islands. Very imaginatively, there are three birds that are well known for these islands. That is Reunion, the Reunion ibis, the Mauritius dodo, and the Rodriguez solitaire. So what do all three birds have in common? Well, first of all, they are all extinct um, and have been extinct for several centuries. They are large and conspicuous birds, meaning that it's very easy for them to be hunted out, but also very easy to tell if, in fact, they are extinct. They are all island dwellers, meaning that they have very small global geographic ranges, making them extremely vulnerable to stochastic events or hunting. And then they all had predation pressure from invasive species such as dogs and cats. And as you can see, from the 16th century onwards, there was just an increase in the number of extinctions on the islands as more shipping occurred and more people visited these islands.
Matt, I'm just going to interrupt you. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're still getting some comments in the chat that there's a gray box. Do you mind just unsharing and sharing once again and just see if it works? And just for the audience, I want to reassure you, we gave this a bash. We did a dry run beforehand and this wasn't happening. So we did our due diligence and I'm just sorry for the frustration. But, oh, it's even worse.
Is it?
At least on my side.
Okay, let me try and
maybe actually close your presentation completely, like your PowerPoint.
okay. What is with these gremlins? Okay, let's see if this works.
You could also maybe try sharing the whole screen or sharing the...
Yeah, I've tried various different iterations, so hopefully this works. Is that better or worse?
It's about the same, Matt. You might have to email it to me and then I can share my screen. Maybe that will work.
Okay, maybe what I'll do is log in with my other laptop in the meantime. Sorry about this.
All right. For some people, it says it's working and it's not critical. So Matt, I think let's just carry on with the show. We're getting on in time. So if everyone can just forgive me, cool. Forgive these squares on the screen and just try and work around them. And yeah,
No
let's
problem
just
at
carry
all.
on with it. And as Etienne Heinrichsen in the chat says, the blocks are what the Berta's Lark are hiding behind. So I like that idea. All right, that's
Okay, great.
Sorry about the interruptions.
No problem. So I always said in my previous presentations that until now, we have not had an extinction in living memory on the African continent. However, on Friday last week, the 10th of October, the IUCN officially declared slender-billed curlew extinct, meaning the first extinction has just occurred on the African continent. And this is a migratory species not only found in Africa, but if I'm not mistaken, the last record was from Morocco in the 90s. So it is very concerning. And it's sad that in the space of me giving this presentation, this has occurred. But there are several species that are also heading that way and are in extreme risk of extinction, that they are critically endangered, the highest category before being classified as extinct, that being the Leoben lark in the Horn of Africa, the Teta palus in Kenya, and none other than the Botha's lark in South Africa. Now, the Botha's lark, similar to the species that I've spoken about previously, the mascarene species, this bird has an extremely small geographic range. Its global distribution is about 500 square kilometers. It is endemic, only found in South Africa. As you can see, its range extends in the north from about Hendrina in Mpumalanga down the eastern escarpment to Harry Smith in the Free State. This area is characterized by high altitude grasslands. And now what you can see over the last 40 years is that in the 1980s, the Botha's lark was fairly common. It had a population of estimated 20,000, meaning a density of one bird per square kilometer. And now in the last decade alone, there's been a 90% decline in the species, where today we have an estimate of only 340 mature individuals left. And as a consequence, it's only one of 11 species in South Africa to be classified as endangered, that being critically endangered. And it's the only endemic species out of all 870 species that is critically endangered and endemic. So just to give you a bit more background about the Botha's lark ecology, it is a very small bird. It's only 13 to 14 centimeters big. It is 18 grams. It's ridiculously light. It is found at an altitude of between 1,500 and 1,900 meters above sea level. It likes short, recently burnt grass and predominantly eats seeds and insects. And if I haven't mentioned it once, I'll drive this home. It is an endemic species. So what are the diagnostic features? Most of the time when I go and meet with farmers, I show them a picture of it and they say to me, the lake Swiss Morsi. So many times what I realize is it's important to show the diagnostic features and help people differentiate between pink-billed lark and bishops, because surprisingly, I've seen many Botha's bishops in my time. So first of all, what you do is you look at the bill. It's got a short conical pink bill, which separates it from several species of lark and can be confusing with the bishops, but it's a lot smaller and less pronounced. Then it's got diffuse facial markings. With a pink-billed lark, it has a vertical teardrop that extends below the eye. Then it also has much more streaking than a pink-billed lark. Its streaking extends all the way onto the flanks, as you can see by this beautiful illustration by Fancy Peacock. And it also has white outer tail feathers, which a pink-billed lark does not. Another characteristic which I challenge you to find in the field is it's got long hind claws, much longer than that of a pink-billed lark. And my advice is if you ever do come across a Botha's lark, make sure that you use a myriad of these diagnostic features rather than one, as it can be quite confusing when in the field. So sometimes you get lucky and you get to see several of these features. As you can see here, this amazing photograph demonstrates, and may I add, this isn't my own, so I'm not being vain, but it shows long hind claws, nice white outer tail feathers, and a diffused facial pattern, meaning that this is none other than a Botha's lark. So I hope everyone at home has been paying attention, because now we're going to be a bit interactive and try see if you are able to figure out, is it a Botha's lark or a pink-billed lark? So you should see a poll on your screen now. And quite simply, what I'm going to ask from you is if you can vote with each slide whether you think it's a Botha's lark or a pink-billed lark. It's a very simple concept. I'll give you time to do so. And without a hesitation, let's begin. So, do you think this is a Botha's lark or a pink-billed lark based on the diagnostic features I have mentioned? Cool. I'm going to go through this quite quickly in the interest of time, but I'll give you time to deliberate it. And without further ado, if you look at its face, it's got quite prominent facial markings. It's got a very deep, almost terracotta colored chest with minimal streaking that does not extend to the flanks. Therefore, this is a pink-billed lark.
So, Matt, I can tell you that 88% of people got that right.
Amazing. I am super impressed that people were listening to me. Okay, so this is slide number 2. Please let me know whether you think this is a Botha's lark, a pink-billed lark. So I'm going to gradually go quicker through these slides, but what I can tell you about this bird specifically is it's somewhat of a trick question. If you look at the background, you can see it's a very arid environment, and that's because this species is the northern race of one of the species. I almost gave it away, but what you can see is it's got a very diffuse face, which would suggest Botha's lark. But if you look at the chest, it does have a pale chest, which is more consistent with the Botha's lark, but the streaking on it is very limited and almost non-existent. And this is a somewhat of a trick question, because this is the northern race, the pink-billed lark found in Namibia.
Matt, just before you move on to the next slide, I just want to let everyone know that if the poll has popped up in the middle of your screen, you should be able to move your mouse to the top of the poll sort of menu and click on it, and you can move it around your screen. And that way it won't be blocking the screen.
Great. Thank you for that, Kurt. And we have slide number 3. If you look at the bird, which one of the 2 species do you think it is? So let me start by saying, if you look at the habitat surrounding the bird, it's not as arid. So you guaranteed that this isn't another trick question. If you look at the face, it's got diffuse facial markings, no prominent vertical teardrop. It's got a paler chest and much more extensive streaking. So in fact, this is a Botha's lark. Here we have slide number 4. This is hard because you don't have the front view as with the other options, but it still does have quite noticeable diagnostic features. So is this a Botha's lark or a pink-billed lark? And yet again, what you look at is the face because that's pretty much the best thing to go on. And you'll see that does have that vertical teardrop. So it is, in fact, a pink-billed lark. So, Kurt, I hope that the numbers are not dropping as we progress through the slides. I hope people are continuing with their 88% success rate.
More or less, yeah. I do want to apologize. I think some people are having trouble with the poll. I think it's blocking the screen or it's disappeared or something. So yeah, if we use these again, we'll do a little crash course beforehand, make sure everyone knows how to navigate the poll. But people are already voting for slide 5. So I think that's a lot of people are figuring out how to do it.
Okay, great. And on that note, this is the last one of these polls. So I'll give you a bit of time to try and vote. Is this a Botha's lark or a pink-billed lark? It is a nice, fairly straightforward image of one. So it should be marginally easier than the couple of red hard questions I asked previously. So I think on that note, I'm going to start break it down. If you look at the habitat, yet again, I've seen Botha's lark and pink-billed lark in very similar environments, so that's not always the best indicator. But if you look yet again at the face, if you use facial markings and extensive streaking on the breast that goes down to the flanks, it can only be one bird, and it's not a bishop. It is Botha's lark. So thank you for entertaining me with this. I very much appreciate it. Now on to the team in Vakastrom. It takes a team to try and conserve the Botha's lark. And first of all, I'll introduce to you Roy Robertson. He works primarily with the farmers doing biodiversity stewardship, trying to get their farms into protected areas. And he's brilliant at what he does. He has grown up on a farm, so he understands exactly how to speak with farmers and to learn and know about aspects of farming that I couldn't even dream of. Then we have Zuleka Mkize, who is our Grasslands community conservation officer, and she's very involved engaging with communities and going to schools, educating them about environmental issues, but also the joys of birds and birding. And then lastly, we have myself, who works specifically with the research on Botha's lark and monitoring of the species. So I'll tell you a bit more about what I do in the subsequent slides. So just to give you an idea of what I do, uh, this is what I think my mom thinks I do. Hi, mom, by the way. This is what my boss thinks I do uh, when I'm in the field. This, in general, when I say I'm a scientist, I think this is what the public thinks I do. Um, I hope and I know that some landowners are watching. I think sometimes they get a bit suspicious of what I'm doing, spending so much time on their property. This is what I think I do when I'm trying to save a species. But yet again, it's not just me, it's a team. So in essence, what I actually do is something more like that. So how exactly does it work? We have a habitat suitability model, and that model kind of uses various climatic and environmental factors to isolate where we think the Botha's lark are. And as you can see, it's still quite a big area, but at least we have something to work on. The next step is it's identifying their property and it's getting permission to actually go onto their property to conduct surveys. And we have such amazing farmers in our landscape that are very welcoming and willing for me to do so. So once I've gained permission, this is a typical Ecotours landscape. It's beautiful in summer, nice and green. And once I've received permission, the idea is that I walk. And I walk and I walk. And when I'm done walking, I walk some more. But it's an amazing job because through all that time, I get to bird. My professional job is to bird. And over the last year or so, I've covered about 490 kilometers of walking. So I've lost quite a bit of weight since beginning of this job. And it also translates to 177 hours of searching for this bird. And just to give you an idea of what that kind of looks like, if you see that small little speck there, that is me in a very, very expansive landscape trying to find a very small bird. And that's not without its challenges. Ecotours has an annual rainfall of approximately 1,000 millimeters per year. In the first 3 months, we already had received that. And subsequently, I got stuck in the mud not once, but several times.
As part of our endeavors to save the endangered bird species of the high altitude grasslands, we have to occasionally go where no man has gone before. Not that we're stuck here, we're just practicing driving where we shouldn't drive. And TLB totally isn't pulling us out, it's just, looking at us do our surveys. See, told you he wasn't stuck, he's just driving backwards, having fun in the grasslands. No problem.
So what you heard is the voice of and the person raising their hands in the air is the Science and Innovation Department of BirdLife, busy figuring out how to get stuck out of the mud. They're not only involved in trying to collate the red data book and the birds on the brink, but helping me not sleep in my car at night. Anyway, and there is some blessings to that as well. I mean, with all the rain, we had in one morning 7 African crake just walking on the side of the road. I know someone will count it. There are only 5 in this picture. I was a mother and 4 chicks. But the good news is, through all this effort and turmoil, we are pleased to say that we have found Botha's lark. As you can see, I was not exaggerating where I say they're like really short grass that has been recently burnt. And we were fortunate enough that it wasn't just 1 or 2, but a small group of birds that we were able to find. And this was around September last year. And within a month or 2, what we're able to find is that they were displaying some interesting behavior. They're starting to exhibit behavior of nesting and breeding. And I'm pleased to say that we found not only 1 or 2, but 19 nests over the past breeding season. What that translates to is not 19 pairs, I must add, but unfortunately several re-nesting attempts. So what we usually would find is 2 to 3 eggs in this little ball or cup in the ground. And it usually takes about 2 weeks for these eggs to be incubated. And what you'll find after 2 weeks is 1 by 1, each egg will hatch. Now, as you can see, the one chick looks slightly older on the right, and then the one on the left is probably no more than a day old, and the third one is still yet to hatch. 2 or 3 days later, they look like this. Not very pretty, I have to add. But they get fed a very high protein diet of mostly insects. So what you'll see is they grow quite rapidly. And after a week, this is what they look like. And after 10 to 12 days, they're basically falling out of the nest. They're quite sentient. You can see they're looking at me. And I came back the day after, and the nest was empty because we were able to successfully find fledglings that have left the nest. However, it's always important to note that it's not all good news, unfortunately, because many of the nests did not make it. For ground nesting birds, it's fairly common occurrence. It's quite regular that almost 79% of the nests fail. Mostly what we suspect is due to predation, but when you're a critically endangered bird, this is very concerning. So why is Botha's lark in trouble? Habitat loss is one of the leading causes attributed to the decline. I've heard figures of close to 60% of the pristine grassland that Botha's lark calls home is under threat. Predators, as demonstrated by the research that we have conducted over the past breeding season, is exactly what we attribute to the low fecundity of the species and success rate. Changes in grazing regime. Historically, Vakastrom used to look something like this, with fields upon fields of sheep. However, with stock theft and the price of wool decreasing quite drastically, many farmers understandably have moved away from sheep and are now looking at cattle. The big problem with cattle and sheep is that they graze differently. Cattle tend to keep it short, but not in the same way that sheep would. Sheep kind of create patches, which are heavily grazed. And this is a problem if a Botha's lark is adapted to a certain habitat. Then the ever-present threat of climate change, as you can see, more extreme weather, with me getting stuck most of the time as well. So it's not just the Botha's lark that's negatively impacted. Incorrect fire regime. So if a bird is breeding, such as a Botha's lark in late spring, early summer, if a fire comes through, unfortunately, it will completely destroy the nest and result in no fecundity in the species. And then other threats such as development of renewable energy. Vakastrom particularly has quite a number of applications for wind energy, which definitely is not a problem. But when it's in prime habitat for Botha's lark, it can cause a bit of a conflict. So why does it matter? Botha's lark is an indicator species. It is showing us that there's something wrong with the environment. It may not be apparent to the wider ecosystem yet, but the same environmental conditions that the crops and the livestock depend on for our farmers is exactly what Botha's lark is showing. There's something wrong. It is the proverbial canary in the coal mine. More than that, Botha's lark is a flagship species. If we protect the Botha's lark, we're not just protecting the Botha's lark, we're protecting 46 other species of conservation concern in the grasslands, but also the grasslands are extremely important for ecosystem services. A lot of our water regeneration and carbon stocks are found in our grasslands. It is our natural heritage. Last month, we celebrated Heritage Month, and this bird epitomizes that. Of our 870 species, this is one of our 18 endemic species. It is part of our rainbow nation. We are a nation of diversity, and if we lose any just smidge of our diversity, we lose a bit of what makes us South African. And then it's a matter of pride. Previously, I said we did not want to be known as the nation that has had an extinction on our watch. Unfortunately, that has already occurred, but we will be the nation that does not let an endemic species go extinct on our watch. So, what is BirdLife doing? We have been very hard at work, firstly devising a Botha's Lark species action plan. Basically, what that is it is a roadmap to plan conservation interventions. It is based on 5 overarching goals, which are research, education and awareness, stakeholder engagement, policy and advocacy, and collaboration. This document hopefully will be published in the next few weeks, if not months. And the idea behind this is if you look at, for example, for one research, it gives quite an extensive and in-depth roadmap of various actions that can be executed in order to save the species. For example, what I'm doing now is action number 2, which is execute full-scale surveys across seasons within novel localities to map population trends and habitat changes. As mentioned, I am trying to expand my surveys. So I have done surveys currently from around Amersfoort in Mpumalanga all the way to Harrismith. It is a good way to get fit. I highly recommend it instead of CrossFit. Then why I'm coming to you today. Botha's Lark is a small nondescript bird. It is a bird that is deeply in need of awareness. It is more endangered than the rhino. The rhino is in the order of thousands, where Botha's Lark is in the order of hundreds. This small nondescript bird is charismatic in its own way, and it deserves to have people know about it. I've met people and birders that have never even heard of a Botha's Lark. So it's important that if people are to care about this bird, they need to be aware of it first. So there are several various avenues which we are exploring. We now very likely have Botha's Lark pins on our online shop. So if you are wanting to get your hands on one, you're more than welcome to go over to the shop and buy one. As you'll see, Ecotours sporting a very nice Botha's Lark t-shirt. This isn't on the online shop yet, as I did check, but hopefully it'll be on soon. Then we're organizing a citizen science event. It's called a Botha's Lark Atlas Bash, which gets a group of around 50 citizen scientists to basically walk through the historical range of Botha's Lark, trying to find it. This inaugural event will take place in a couple of weeks, and hopefully we will repeat this next year. And then we look at several studies. So as mentioned, predation is a huge issue. So the idea would be to put out camera traps to identify which predators are causing the majority of the decline, and then use predator mitigation strategies such as fences or other more creative methods to increase the yield per nest. We're also looking at genetic testing to see if the genetic diversity of the birds, such as inbreeding, is problematic. And as mentioned, yet again, the birds do re-nest and reattempt throughout the breeding season. So the main idea with coloring would be to be able to identify which pairs are re-nesting, and if they are in fact monogamous, because we have found groups of 3 or 4 birds during the breeding season together in close proximity to the nest, which begs the question, is there potentially cooperative breeding? All of these questions will be elucidated from coloring. Tracking, as I mentioned, the birds are currently 18 grams, which is very difficult to find tracking devices that are safe for the birds, but we are exploring every avenue in order to try and find where these birds are actually going. And then other aspects such as passive monitoring, so putting camera traps out at water points because these birds do like to drink, or audio moths, which are basically sound recorders, to try and see if we can pick them up through technology. So how can you make a difference? Reporter sizing, even if you're not 100% sure, but based on the results from the poll, it seems that everyone's an expert in identifying Botha's Lark. So if you do happen to be in the greater Vakastrom area and you see a small LBJ, please go ahead and report the sighting to me. Even if it's a false sighting, any information is valuable, because at this point, we've found a handful, but we still need to find the rest of the 340. And that is vital as we are reaching the breeding season now. As Kurt mentioned, we are NGO. We do rely on the generosity of the general public. So if this talk has moved you, it will be extremely meaningful, as it does help us. It does make huge changes. Thanks to the generosity of the general public, we are able to actually expand our surveys and expand the number of people on the ground this breeding season. So it's very exciting times. And at the very basic level, all I ask and plead is to raise awareness for this bird. We tried really hard, unfortunately not successfully, to raise Botha's Lark as the bird of the year. But I have to say, we went toe-to-toe with some very charismatic raptors. So I think as the Vakastrom team and many BirdLife members lobbying, I think we can be proud of our effort. But it's not all doom and gloom. I want to leave on a very positive note. These 4 species all have something in common. So this is a southern bald ibis, a Cape vulture, wattled crane, and white-winged flufftail. Now, if you said all 4 of these birds, you'll be correct. But something more and deeper and more significant about all 4 of these birds is that while the Botha's Lark was being uplisted from endangered to critically endangered in May this year, these 4 species were being downlisted, which all 4 of them is due to conservation intervention. These are conservation success stories. We, as BirdLife, have put a team of 3 people in Vakastrom to try and conserve the Botha's Lark, and hopefully with the same conservation intervention that we have done previously with these species, although giving full credit to our counterparts such as EWT with the wattled cranes, we are hoping we can replicate the same success with the Botha's Lark. On that note, I would just like to acknowledge our funders, specifically Birding Ecotours, that sponsors my position. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Matt. That was a story that went through all sorts of different twists and turns, from sort of the sadness of the breeding failure of the group that you observed earlier, and then ended with a sense of hope and a sense of optimism for the future. And I think with yourself, Zuleka, and Roy in place, I've got every confidence that you'll make incredible breakthroughs and save the Botha's Lark from a very, very sad future. So thank you for your work, and thank you very much for your presentation tonight. It was excellent, by the way. out in Vakastrom, you spend a lot of time alone, right? Have you been spending that time practicing your PowerPoint skills?
Yeah, I have to say it's what keeps me busy at night.
Well, it shows. On top of all your field work and everything, I wonder what you do in the evenings in Vakastrom. I was joking with Matt beforehand. I wanted to check with him how much time he had for questions and what time he wanted to finish off tonight. And he says, I'm in Vakastrom. As far as I'm concerned, we can have questions for the rest of the evening. This is the most exciting night of my month. So thanks everybody for joining and making Matt's evening. All right. We've got a lot of questions, a lot of burning questions, Matt. So thank you everybody for watching and thanks for all your questions. And we're going to start going through all of these now. And the first question, which is a very interesting one and just practical, from Penny Abbott, she wonders, how do you avoid trampling the nests? I mean, they look very camouflaged. How do you even know where they are in the first place?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually did some research into it because I had the very same question on, do these nests actually get trampled? Apparently it does occur, mostly from livestock, but it's very rare. I think the article I looked at was black larks up in the northern hemisphere, and it is very rare. And what I realized is if you look at the cup shape of the nest, it's sunk below ground level. So you actually have to try quite, yeah, you have to put quite a lot of effort in to actually try and squash the nest. Not that I've ever tried, but I think it's actually designed that even if you do step on it, it doesn't automatically crush the nest. But having said that, during that field season, you learn to be extremely careful of where you place your feet because of the importance of it. Generally, it's quite easy to find the nest because the adults are usually um, incubating or close to the nest. So you can kind of figure out if an adult doesn't leave an area, you quickly find the nest, cause minimal disturbance, and then retreat as fast as possible.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you would encourage anyone who suspects that they might have birds not nesting not to get too close or to try and confirm themselves necessarily. You rather try to get photos from a distance or something like that, right?
Yeah, what I can say is our colleague John Kinghorn very uh, expertly spearheaded Botha's Lark guidelines, observational guidelines, which gives basically all you need to know about how to ethically uh, observe Botha's Lark. I mean, and if you're so lucky to actually find it. So let me preface it with that first.
And Matt, what size would you say this nest is? You know, if you had to compare it to a fruit or something.
Jeez, as very, very small. I want to say a lemon. I don't know why. But maybe actually a lemon cut in half is actually pretty good analogy. I think it could fit in a Botha's Lark nest.
Wow.
Not that I've ever tried that, but it's an interesting analogy that I thought up on the fly.
I must say that's a lot smaller than I anticipated or gathered from those photos. It definitely seemed a bit bigger. I don't know, sort of like I was thinking a grapefruit, but a lemon is tiny. So I can imagine it is quite hard to step on that. And that sort of leads me on to the next question, which is from Rob Simmons, asking about how Botha's Lark, you know, what the theories are in terms of it evolving alongside grazers, ungulates that crop grass really closely, and that sort of deep history relationship that they would have had with animals that probably aren't on the landscape anymore.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Apparently, it's quite controversial. I didn't know that, but there are a lot of conflicting theories about what actually occurred historically. But one of the most common theories I've heard is that, I mean, the grasslands used to have several wild ungulates, such as blesbok. Some people say massive herds like the Serengeti. Some people say actually it's nothing like the Serengeti. There are small herds that used to migrate through. Regardless of that, two important factors are required for Botha's Lark. It's fire and grazing. From what I understand, it's fire historically it used to start because of lightning somewhere in Harry Smith and burn all the way up to Buckstrom. One extensive long fire because there were no fire breaks or fire management back several centuries ago. And as a result, there used to be a lot more suitable habitat that didn't need to be maintained because what happens is the wild ungulates or the grazers used to just maintain the short grass where the fire actually makes it short. So that's kind of the theory around it. I've heard some academics actually saying that historically there were quite large settlements, even 200, 300 years ago in the area. So maybe the bird has actually always had quite a close association to people and their livestock, which is also interesting. Me not being a historian or not being a landscape ecologist, I'm very, very impartial to any of those theories. I honestly can't speak.
Interesting, and I'm sure over time you'll start developing a more robust understanding of that relationship as time goes by. Because we have had a couple of questions. I'm going to sort of lump them all into one, and it's just about. So of course, cows and sheep, which are farmed, with a fair amount of regularity in that area, can replicate that environment to an extent. But what about actual indigenous game on something like a game farm or a hunting farm? Have you been able to access anything like that?
So yes, I mean, Lesbok is actually still quite commonly kept on several farms. I mean, wildebeest as well. So I have been to areas where that is the case. What I have found in general, and this is just anecdotal in my own opinion, no science involved, but generally the grass is quite a bit longer than on average you'd get a place where you have sheep. Because I think the stocking density of farmers that keep sheep in the area is quite a lot higher. If you also understand that the purpose for many of these blessed book is for game hunting, um, and also, yeah, let me not go too deep into it, but that's the high level answer for it.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I'm sure some people are happy to hear that answer. Matt, you've spoken quite a lot about the vast range. I mean, it was over 500 kilometers that you said you've walked in the past season. Are there other ways of covering that? So I think you mentioned having sound monitoring equipment, but what about some kind of imaging equipment? Someone specifically has asked about thermal drones or drones of any kind.
Yes, those would be amazing. I know there's also the idea of just using thermal scopes. It would be amazing if anyone's willing to sponsor a thermal drone. That would be amazing, but unfortunately, we are constrained by financial uh, constraints. So for me, at this point, the old-fashioned walking through the landscape and the more innovative ways of audio master recordings and camera traps will have to for now. But I mean, we're always looking to innovate, and if we can use drones or any other sort of technology, such as also what's it, the NHDVI. Oh, I'm massacring it. As I said, I'm not a landscape ecologist, but if you look at satellite imaging of grassland. You can also figure out where the areas that are burnt and also the shorter grass. So you can use science to your advantage. Also, I mean, we've been using the habitat suitability models to identify areas of priority to search. So we are using science to the best of our ability.
Mm. So even if you can't necessarily find the individual bird, it can still be incredibly useful to just try and find that particularly suitable habitat. But I wonder,
yes,
there's obviously endangered grassland habitats and endangered birds. The pampas meadowlark comes to mind. I wonder what that's in Argentina. I wonder what else you've learned, like from other conservation efforts. Are there similar efforts undergoing along the lines that you're working with? Things that you've been able to learn from or get ideas from?
Yeah, no. So firstly, thank you. I see in the comments the NBBI. So thank you for that. I much appreciated. Yeah, so there are several species such as the Leoben lark and the meadowlark that you mentioned, where we can learn a whole lot of, um, or there are some learning points that we can take out of it. At this point, we still need to locate the birds because a lot of that was surrounding actually trying to conserve them. But first things first, you need to find them to conserve them. So this is the biggest challenge we have now is trying to locate the birds.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So hence the need for thermal drones and thermal scopes and all kinds of, paramilitary equipment. Matt, we've got a question from a Jonathan Stacy who wonders what you've considered in terms of leaving scent trails or creating scent trails that lead towards the nests, and that could potentially lead predators towards these breeding sites.
Yeah, so that's something that has come up quite regularly, and we've discussed it quite a lot. It is a concern. Um, we did try to limit the amount of time we spent at the nests, and we are looking at also in the future to disinfect our clothes or at least our boots to try and limit the scent trail as much as possible. But in the areas where we have found the nests, there is quite a lot of human traffic, meaning that unfortunately, regardless of whether it's us or another person, there are quite a lot of trails leading throughout the landscape. So it kind of becomes this mishmash and maze of scent trails. So it is a concern, but at this point, I think it's such the area is such a thoroughfare that who knows if it's actually going to impact the birds negatively, but we are taking precautions to make sure that it's limited to the best standards possible.
Hmm. Yeah, again, I'm sure as time goes by and you start sampling more areas, these kinds of concerns will become more important. Matt, we've got a lot of questions around landowners and land use and ways you can work with landowners. So I'm going to try and just synthesize those into sort of one or two questions if possible, because we've got a lot to get through still. So basically, yeah, I mean, one of the questions is, can you burn patch mosaics, create like a range of habitats and try and see what might work best? How do you work with landowners? Do landowners give you the permission to sort of run any experiments on their land? How do landowners get involved? And I think just in general, if you can elaborate on that relationship you have with landowners and farmers in the area, I think people would appreciate that.
Okay, so first of all, we are looking at various experiments to do, such as the mosaic patchwork and doing test plots and trying to see if that would work. Unfortunately, I think that also depends on the birds. We can do these tests, but knowing whether, in fact, the birds will favor it or not is a big issue. So that's the first obstacle. Although we could use proxy species, for example, people larks, and see if they have an affinity to it. But in essence, we know they do like short, recently burned grass as well. So it could work. And then with regard to just our relationship with landowners, I was in a conversation with one of the landowners in Bakkerstrom who actually sent me my talk. So he definitely was keen to actually attend this talk. So the relationship with many of the landowners in the area has been amazing. Being a city boy, I have been overwhelmed by the hospitality of people in this neck of the woods, especially being English and my Afrikaans being absolutely horrid. It's been quite an experience trying to speak Afrikaans and many of the farmers taking pity on me and us meeting in the middle with my broken Afrikaans, and they're much better English. So yeah, they've been absolutely amazing. But I have to say that all credit goes to Roy as well. Roy has really established really strong relationship with a lot of these farmers, and having a team like we do in Bakkerstrom makes all our work a lot easier.
Oh, that's great. And what a great team you have going there. So someone asked specifically, how do landowners get involved? I suppose between yourselves and Roy, they should get in touch. So I'll drop your email address in the chat box. And I mean, it's kind of Roy's job to help guide them towards a position in which they can help and contribute towards the conservation of Botha's Lark.
Exactly. What I can say is landowners, especially if they're in the historical area of Botha's Lark, they can help by letting me know that I'm welcome on their farm and where they're based. And I'm more than happy to come out there and survey their farm and look for it. If they have lots of grassland that is short, it's prime for birds as lark. So many landowners tell me this. I get a call and they say, we have prime location, come out and see if you can find it. And I say, thank you so much. I'm more than willing. But yeah, so we also have a network. What I should mention is Roy's specific focus is Southern Mpumalanga. We also have colleagues in the Eastern Free State that manage those areas. So I kind of am transient through the landscape wherever I think there's birds lark. That's where I survey. But the managers that actually are involved with the landowners are more geographically based.
Mm. Yeah, that point you raised about Eastern Mpumalanga is a good one because some people are asking, is Vakastrom, the epicenter of your focus at the moment? What's changed?
Yeah.
They used to exist in certain other areas. Where else are you looking? So yeah, maybe a bit of its historical range, and then maybe what's changed and where else are you looking?
Yeah. So historically, Vakastrom was the epicenter for Botha's Lark. I mean, if you go to Vakastrom, you'll see that almost all of the town is centered around birding in one shape or form. And many people came specifically to look for Botha's Lark and Rhodes Lark. And unfortunately, as it's become harder and harder to find these birds, the economy's taken somewhat of a dive in Vakastrom. So firstly, it highlights the strong link between livelihoods and the birds. But yeah, so in the last, should we say, half a decade, the birds have all but disappeared from the greater Vakastrom area. They are around in small numbers, but it leads us to try and search more novel locations further afield. Historically, the type specimen was found in Vredefort, which is just south of Gauteng, and that's where the bird gets its Afrikaans name, the Vaalrivier leeuwerik, the Vaal River. So there's still a lot of area to cover. There are historical records from a lot further west, and it's up to me and to try and ground the truth whether there still are populations there, because there is hope, and I do believe that these birds have to be somewhere. I don't think the birds would just disappear completely. The issue is just trying to find them.
Yeah, well, good luck with that, Matt. So could you tell us a bit more about this Atlas Bash you've got planned? Someone has asked if they can get involved. I wonder if it's not a bit too late for this particular Atlas Bash.
So yes, unfortunately, I think the planning is at very advanced stages at this point. So I don't think we have capacity to take on any more people willing, but there will definitely be opportunities to volunteer your time and energy and help me with surveys. So if people are keen, they're more than welcome to get in contact with me, and hopefully we will be able to make it work. And I mean, more eyes and feet on the ground are always welcome.
Yeah, I mean, you'd prefer a thermal drone apparently, but in the meantime, an Atlas Bash will have to work. And for those who might not know, an Atlas Bash is basically, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically just a mass birding sort of efforts to try and get a lot of people on the landscape throughout a range of areas and locations, all looking for the same thing in this case.
Yeah, and I mean a coordinated effort. So Atlas Bash is generally in relation to SABAP2, and SABAP2 is South Africa's atlasing project where all the citizen scientists contribute their data, and that gives us an idea of species distribution and occupancy. And that's exactly what we want for Botha's Lark. We not only want to try and find these birds, but we want to contribute to science. As a conservation organization, I think it's quite poignant to have multiple objectives, and one of them is contributing to science, as we will only know as much as we are able to elucidate through the scientific method.
Matt, what is the efforts to promote avitourism in Buckstrom? What are the efforts to promote avitourism in Buckstrom looking like? Is that a big source of raising awareness, or are you trying to raise awareness across the entire country, not just in this area?
Yes, I think the idea would be to raise awareness throughout the country, not just in Buckstrom. But I think our colleague John Kinghorn is best placed to speak about avitourism. But yeah, it's a big source of livelihood. It's a big focus of the town, and we really hope that people will still come to Buckstrom and experience the other magnificent bird life that Buckstrom has to offer. It really is a special place with many amazing grassland species, not just Botha's Lark and Rudd's Lark, but other really cool species that call this area home.
So what would be the best way to get involved for people in that local area to try and promote that? I suppose the one thing would be to get in touch with us and try and get active on Go Birding, which is a platform to try and promote avitourism within South Africa. So if you are a property owner, if you're trying to list a B&B or some other accommodation in the Buckstrom area or anywhere in South Africa, in fact, and try and make yourself visible to birders, you can visit gobirding.birdlife.org.za and you can learn more there. Otherwise, just email info@birdlife.org.za. Matt, Bradley Gibbons asks if there was a farmer who had a confirmed record of Botha's Lark, should that be kept confidential? Is it something that he should get in touch with you about?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that question. Yeah, ultimately, we would really appreciate, given the sensitivity of the species and the dire state of it, that all sightings are kept confidential, because we do want the best outcome for these species. And I know how sought after Botha's Lark has become for many listers and many people wanting to see it. So we are more than happy to work with landowners to try and conserve these birds. We do want people to be able to see these birds for generations to come. And in order to do that, we need to try and locate them. We need to try and conserve them to get their numbers up to a stage where they're not in such dire turmoil.
Yeah. Speaking of population rates and trying to stabilize and support them, we've got a couple of questions just revolving around captive breeding and what that might entail. Is it possible? What's the story with captive breeding and trying to create a stable population in that way?
Yes. So under the scientific explorations and studies, one of the things that we are strongly considering is captive breeding. There are quite a few obstacles that we need to overcome before that becomes viable. To my knowledge, larks in general are able to be kept in captivity, but are extremely difficult to breed. They require display flights in many cases, and if you keep them in an aviary, there's very little space for them to do that. Yeah, it's something that we are exploring, but there's a lot of obstacles that need to be figured out before we're able to get to that point. And hopefully, we will find birds at novel locations before we need to get to that. It is something that we definitely are considering and preparing for all eventualities if it does come to it.
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that just yet, Matt. We've got another question that sort of revolves around, heavy tourism, but at the same time not being able to go look for Botha's Lark. I'm sure that's something that you have to think about a lot and probably get questioned about a lot. So maybe could you just explore that dynamic there? Because of course we want people to enjoy the greater Vakastrom area, but at the same time that location is very sensitive.
Yeah. So at this point, there is a lot of sensitivity around the species in general with regards to locations, as previously mentioned. So we're not releasing any locations to the public. We're not encouraging the public to go and look for it. That being said, we're encouraging them to look for it at novel locations, just not in areas where we are currently monitoring them. So what we encourage is anyone who's wanting to see one, I would be extremely grateful if you do go into the Greater Vakastrom area and go through the grasslands trying to find them, because that's what we need. We need people trying to find their own Botha's larks. It would be huge and really helpful if they do. Unfortunately, we just can't facilitate that in the sense of trying to show them at the sites where we have found them.
Of course, the problem then becomes, hundreds of people every few days visiting the same limited amount of sites rather than just a researcher once every day or two. Just wanted to,
and also just to give perspective, it's been a year and we do not have a huge amount of birds to account for, and that is very concerning. So although there is hope that there are novel locations, based on our current knowledge, we know very, very few, and that is very concerning because it does translate to the critically endangered status that it does hold.
So get out and get looking for them, and sort of old-fashioned birding, I guess. No GPS to lead you straight to that spot. Rather a bit of adventure, a bit of trial and error.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we'll start winding down, and last few questions. One is just on the specific ecology of Botha's Lark. What's the purpose? And this is from Eddie Joe McKay, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. What is the purpose of the extra long hind claw?
That's the interesting part. Not only does it have a long hind claw, it has quite long wings. It's got on average about 5 millimeters longer wings than pink-billed larks. So there's a few theories for these longer organs or body parts, should we say. And that is potentially Botha's Lark is nomadic by nature. Maybe they're taking a lot larger movements than we anticipate. With the hind claw specifically, it could be to just kind of move the grass. I'm not too clued up on exactly what its purposes could be used for. I've heard some people give theories behind it, but quite frankly, it could even be just aggression to fight with other larks, because they can get quite aggressive during breeding season. But yeah, there's all these theories require ground truthing, so I'm yet to actually see the purpose of them in action.
Well, let's hope over time, Matt, as this project grows in prominence and people's awareness of the plight of this bird grows, you have a lot more resources and a lot more eyes on the ground helping you to unravel some of these mysteries, because I think it's not only me, but also everyone else in this lobby that's curious about some of these questions that we just can't answer yet. I've noticed in the comments, a lot of people are mentioning that they were lucky enough to see a Botha's and a Rudd's, or dipped on a Rudd's, but saw the Botha's, or vice versa over the years. But, there's a particular point at which those stop. And yeah, it's a very, very sad thought to think that, not many more people might get this chance in the near future. So wishing you all the very best of luck as we as we work towards trying to protect and conserve this bird and secure its future so that people can have those incredible experiences of seeing this tiny but very significant bird.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's for the whole motivation for me is so that future generations can say, this isn't where Botha's Lark used to be. This is where I've seen Botha's Lark.
That's a very poignant thought, Matt. Obviously, you do a lot of thinking during those long walks that you take.
You don't know the half of it.
Any particular horror stories from the times that you've been out in the bush? Have you encountered any snakes? Have you twisted an ankle, whatever?
Actually, most of the snakes I've encountered, which I have stepped on, have been right here at the Vakastrom Center. So I have seen a couple of snakes in the field, but by far the more snakes I've seen, it has been actually either just outside my door or when I've been walking around in the landscape, just between the buildings and stepping on them. So that's been particularly fun. And just today, I was in the Free State trying to help a farmer corral a bull. So I was weaving up and down the embankment of the highway, trying to encourage the bull to go in the right direction, which we eventually were able to do.
Well done on that. I hope that the farmer invited you to go survey his lands afterwards.
No, it turned out I was one of the farmers I actually have a really good relationship with. So he was quite appreciative and he was a bit confused about how I just materialized out of thin air at the convenient moment.
Yeah, the Good Samaritan. Matt, just before we end, I wanted to commend you on your design skills. As Matt mentioned, he created a very wonderful T-shirt, which I'm wearing, and he illustrated this graphic himself. And it's also on the back. I don't know if you'll be able to make it out. But anyway, that shirt will hopefully be available on our store soon. And Matt also designed this pin badge and the backing card that goes with it. And I hate to be a complete salesman, but the proceeds of the sales of this pin badge go towards Matt's project. So if you were moved, inspired, and encouraged by Matt's work, then please do visit our store and give that pin badge. Buy that pin badge or buy 10 of them and give them to your friends for Christmas, because that money goes towards supporting Matt's project directly. So it's one of the best ways you can help him from afar. And then if you are in the Vakastrom area or areas in which the Botha's larks historically appeared, what would you like them to do, Matt?
If they're happy and willing to volunteer their time to help me walk through the landscape, I am looking to expand the project and take some volunteers into the future. It'll be great. Obviously, unfortunately, we aren't able to offer much more than our love and gratitude for their help, but it would be much appreciated if anyone is willing and keen, even if they want to come up from further afield, for example, Joburg or Cape Town for a week to lend their expertise and time. We are always welcoming and appreciative of that.
And they might also just have the chance to see Botha's lark in the flesh. Hey?
Exactly. There's always a chance. It's more than zero.
Well, Matt, thanks so much for your time. Do you have any last thoughts or last comments of what you'd like to share with the audience?
Peace. Nothing in particular besides the tagline that we have used several times, which is, it is our bird, it's our heritage. It's up to us as a nation to save this bird.
Very inspiring, Matt. And I'm sure that you've gotten a lot more supporters and a lot more fans after your excellent presentation tonight. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Jess in her tech support role for all the support that she's given us throughout the last hour and a half. And of course, thank you to the audience for joining. Of course, we wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. So thank you for your support tonight and for your support of BirdLife South Africa in general. It's really heartwarming to see this community get together every 2 weeks. And we will see you in another 2 weeks to explore citizen science and the importance of contributing to these projects. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Matt.